Hello, all you beautiful people in Webtown. Welcome back to Crypto Comics and our review of Firearm, Issue 0. This comic book came packaged with the 1993 Malibu Comics movie, direct-to-video movie of the same name, Firearm. If you have not watched Firearm yet, I would highly recommend you do that before you watch this comic book review. This comic was written by the screenwriter of the movie, James Robinson, penciled by Mike Waringo and Rob Haynes, inked by John Lowe, and featuring interior colors by my favorite, Food Hammer. As we talked about in the movie review, I do believe that a lot of these Ultraverse characters were created by Malibu Comics so that they could be turned into film and television properties, and that this direct-to-video movie was their first experiment in that. Unfortunately, after reading the comic book, I think that the movie failed. The movie was better than I thought it was going to be, but now that I've read the comic book, I see how much of the plot of the movie was completely inconsequential to the actual story that was going to be told in this issue 0. Subjects and characters they should have focused on in the film, they didn't. And so I actually had to go back and watch the movie again after reading this comic book, which I'm not very happy about, to be honest. But I will say that the comic book is written much better than the film was written, starting with the excellent dialogue on this splash page.
You know, I can't help thinking about Abbott, Costello, and the Three Stooges around about now. When I was a kiddie, I loved watching them old dumb movies, especially the ones set in a haunted house, or an underground crypt, or someplace spooky. The villains were always gangsters, or counterfeiters, evil treasure hunters maybe, who'd pose as ghosts or monsters to scare people off. Scooby-Doo made a career out of the same scenario, as I recall. Anyways, those old black and white flicks, when the gangster, a ghost, would creep up behind Costello or Curly, I would scream and laugh and jump around like a maniac. I loved that stuff. Of course, I was 4, 5, 6 years old at the time, so don't start looking at me funny. Why am I thinking about that now? Because I feel like I'm the fat, dumb comedian. In this place, I half expect a gangster with a sheet over his head to creep up behind me. Where am I? Why am I here? Well, that's a whole story in itself. A wild one, too. Someone should make a movie about it.
Oh, zing! Now, in the movie, do you remember the blonde-haired guy in the beginning who gets murdered in the jail while he's being interrogated? And it's his girlfriend who's held hostage at the end of the movie by the demonically possessed Ultra Duet. So she gave Alex Swan, aka Firearm, a tip that Charlie Kent, the blonde-haired guy, had hidden some evidence about what's going on in this whole epic story at this old Hollywood prop house. So Swan goes and breaks in, retrieves the evidence, and then he mails it to himself because it might be too hot. Then he heads over to Blake's house. Do you remember the producer who he roughs up on the movie set? That's Blake, and he has just been murdered. And he has this running dialogue with McGinty, who's this other detective who wasn't even in the friggin' movie. The black dude doesn't even make an appearance, which really irked me, actually. Because it means that the black dude in the movie served absolutely no purpose. He's not a character in this comic book series. I just thought, what a joke. And most of their conversation really has no relevance to this story. But Blake's son, the blonde-haired kid here, being consoled by the female officer, wants to hire Swan to investigate his father's murder. And of course, to keep the kid safe, Swan refuses. And then that night, Swan has this terrible dream that just is stupid to me because it looks like he's dreaming about Creature of the Black Lagoon and The Fly and John Carpenter's The Thing. And then Duet shows up in the dream, but it's a nice 2-page spread. But I don't get it. What's the point here? There isn't one. So then he goes to see his friend Ed Dante, who's a fellow Englishman who works as a jockey at the local horse track. And that's where he sends all of the evidence that's too hot for him to keep for himself. He sends it to a normal citizen who then, gives it back to him. It just seems like this is a really big waste of plot. So he busts open the envelope, and he discovers that Blake had gotten involved in snuff films. Now, if you don't know what a snuff film is, that's a movie of a real-life murder. There's a high-profile actor named Darren Summers who looks remarkably like a young Jack Nicholson, and a creepy occultist named Alfred de Valerie, who happens to look like the leader of the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey, if Anton LaVey had hair. So basically, they've been all together making these snuff films. They've made 3 of these films already, but haven't released them. They're finishing the 4th film here in the near future, and then all 4 of these snuff films will be released at the same time. So Alex Swan follows the actor Darren Summers, the Jack Nicholson lookalike, who goes to this airfield. And then that night, Swan returns, hops the fence, and is going to break into the airplane hangar, where it turns out a major feature film production is occurring. Except it's not just a major feature film. I mean, they've got lights, a whole crew, 35mm film, sound, the whole thing, the whole big production, robes, creepy druids chanting. They have a sacrificed goat, but it's a snuff film. And the victim of the film is going to be Blake's teenage son. So these creepy Satanists raised this demon god, Hakeldama, to gain strength by ravaging the boy's body. And of course, Firearm's not going to let any of that happen. So he proceeds to kick some Satanist ass. And because he stopped the unholy sacrifice, of course, the demon disappears. He manages to save the boy. Bodyguards show up to try to stop him even more. And of course, he just wades right through them. But there's old Duet. And because of the demon god Hakeldama's essence, the demonic energy is making Duet stronger, becoming greater than ever. Can a tango, Swan? So Swan takes his jacket off and throws it over Duet's head like he's a dang matador fighting a bull. And then, of course, the sirens, eew, 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 mean the police are coming out of nowhere. And for some reason, even though Duet could kill all the cops and Swan, he's not going to do it because he wants to take his time when he kills Swan. So he decides he's going to escape through the bay door. And as the bay door's closing, Duet's body is too big. Now, in the movie, he's just the normal size of a human, and he's just got, some makeup on his face to make him look a little more demonic. But here, he's got a larger body. And so, instinctively, Swan knows that large body isn't going to be able to fit under the bay door. So he's going to have to turn back into his human form for just a moment in order to slip under and escape. And that's when Swan strikes. Blam! Duet is dead. The boy is saved. And Swan, looking over the dead body of Duet, says,
"Can you believe? I actually thought you were some kind of a threat."
And that's where the story ends. The boy is saved, the police are saved, the city is saved, the day is saved. And so ends this unusual Malibu Comics experiment into making a story that starts as a film and ends as a comic book. And it was a big waste of money. They should have just told this story in comic book format. And if they weren't going to do that, then James Robinson should have written a better script for the movie. And the black dude who is throughout the friggin' direct-to-video movie should have been in the comic book. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous that none of those characters made an appearance in this comic book. That's shoddy. That is shoddy writing. And I feel like I just wasted my time with this whole thing. Though, I will admit, I am more interested in Firearm as a comic book character now. And so I am going to read Firearm #1. But that's going to be, we'll come back to that in a month or so. I need a break from Malibu Comics for a while. But tomorrow I am going to review one last Malibu comic in this series on the Ultraverse. And it is a story that also has to do with filmmaking. It has to do with movies. It is a very interesting, somewhat twisted tale that will surprise any Wizard of Oz fans out there. So stick around here on Crypto Comics.